Welcome to another Ramblings of a Madman video, a type of videos where I ramble about stuff. This time it's about combat in action RPGs. Combat is the most exciting part of any game that does it right. One of the hardest genres to create good combat for is the action RPG genre. By that I don't mean Diablo-esque isometric hack and slash games, but 3D behind the character camera action RPGs like The Witcher, Souls games, etc. Reason is that character leveling system is tied into the very action-based combat, so it's a difficult thing to balance in order to create something truly amazing. So in this video I'll share my 3 favorite combat systems in modern gaming from the games I've played. Bear in mind I haven't played a lot of games yet, like Nier, Tales of Arise, Granblue Fantasy Relink and many others. Also there's a reason that in this video it's only modern games, because I don't remember details of older games that much, so I don't want to go down that road due to misinformation based on misremembering. Let's get to it, you arithmetic bastards. At number 3 is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I still haven't played Rebirth, but I'm assuming it's the same system. I love traditional turn-based RPG combat, so when Square decided to change it up to a far more actiony style with lots of action and movement freedom, I was a bit disappointed because I thought that strategy is out of the window, because the RPG combat elements would be scrapped for a more mass appeal action-only combat. How wrong was I? I love when I'm wrong, and Final Fantasy VII Remake is one of my favorite I was wrong examples, because what Square created is in my opinion one of the best, if not the best, combination of action and strategy in an RPG. They managed to retain the ATB system and implement it perfectly into its own really good action system. What they've managed to accomplish is to create one of the most dynamic combat systems ever. There are combos, aerial combos, ability attacks, spells, focus on movement, synergy attacks, enemies with varied resistances, well-made challenging combat encounters, and to top it all off, there's an option to switch to another party member that have their own distinct playstyles whenever. It's one of those rare systems where repeated encounters can be made much more interesting due to party member playstyle variety and an option to focus more on the strategic ATB elements, or more on the actiony side of things like combos and such. So there were always tons of available variations to utilize. Material leveling system complements the combat system fantastically, as it can create playstyles inside the playstyles for party members to focus more on. Boss fights are fantastic and quite challenging, where all the players' skill and knowledge is going to be tested. Each boss has many attacks that are going to keep players on their toes throughout the whole fight. Defeating a boss in Final Fantasy VII Remake is really rewarding because of the epic combat system and the boss design. Visual effects and sound effects also need commending, as it gives that extra layer of immersion and epicness. Only thing I didn't like were some of the normal enemies. Frequently JRPGs like to give us the most uninteresting regular enemies like rabbits, gnats, bats, dogs, cats, rats, and it's very dull compared to something more menacing. Then again, anything is more menacing than the aforementioned boring bastards. That's it for number 3. At number 2 we have From Software combat system. At times very underrated by the gamers that don't realize how difficult it is to create anything similar, because the level of detail is on a level barely anyone can accomplish. Many developers have tried copying this system and failed at every step, because even they didn't realize how many details there are. Heavy combat system is one of the most difficult 3D systems to do. First and foremost, animations need to be really bloody good. That means almost every movement, be it just moving around, attacking or whatever, needs to be accompanied by different animation speed duration. Movement that isn't broken in a clunky way but can be continued into a dodge, attack or sprint. Weapon swings that need to feel properly weighty based on the weapon type. Movement done during the attack that shouldn't be too slidey, but instead need to have realistic rhythmic steps, so that there isn't too much attack speed discrepancy which creates clunky and janky combat, like in Lords of the Fallen. That is a fantastic example of bad animation duration discrepancy of individual movements and attacks. In my opinion, best felt animations of every From Software game is Demon's Souls Remake. The way minor details in every movement are done there is simply superb. While not the best From Software combat system, it does animations the best, accompanied by incredible visual effects. Some might say Sekiro is the best, and while I agree that Sekiro's combat system is one of the best ever, Sekiro is not an action RPG, but an action game. One of my favorite From Software games, but definitely not an RPG, so it has no place on this list. Then there's the level of tracking in attacks that needs to be properly maintained so that dodge animation and regular movement retains its realistic effectiveness. Sliding attacks are the most frequent mistakes I've seen other developers do when it comes to animations, and tracking attacks are the second most frequent mistake. Every attack in most games has some tracking to it, but there is an acceptable level where all sorts of dodges, light, medium, heavy, movement and positioning have their effectiveness while still retaining relative free flow so that the combat doesn't play out like in an assembly line. Again, both Lords of the Fallen games have lots of issues with massive tracking on enemy attacks, especially the original game. Surge 1 had the same problem, which Surge 2 improved to a degree, but to this day no one does tracking in heavy combat as well as From Software. Their combat framework is simply incredible. Then the enemy design, an aspect where From Software is on another level, except for Elden Ring that unfortunately ruined the behavioral boss AI in order to match the increased challenge of fighting the player and the summons at the same time. Clearly the game was made with that in mind, which in turn made solo attempts very predictable due to cheating AI and more of an assembly line type of encounter than the previous better balanced games. Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne might have the best boss fights in action RPG history. It's ridiculous how epic some of the fights are. I'll never forget the Nameless King boss fight in my life. It's the holy shit amount of holy shit that equals to holy shit. Until Elden Ring, boss fights felt relatively fair, with rarely any attacks that would do stupendous amounts of damage instantly, and even if there was such an attack, it was usually a long duration attack that was easy to dodge, but was there to change the dynamic of the fight briefly. Some of the bosses were obviously more difficult than the others, and it's a good thing because not every boss needs to be on a similar difficulty level. Sometimes easier boss fights come in handy to speed up the progression after being stuck for days on a particular boss. In my opinion, Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne have the best combat done by From Software when accounting for all the aspects, while Demon's Souls Remake has the best animations and visual effects. As said earlier, Sekiro is not in the category of action RPGs. Only thing that I can't forgive From Software outside of ruining behavioral AI of most bosses in Elden Ring is that their backstabs and finishers after parry are so bad that it's like they've given that part to some indie developer to add to the game while they themselves said, who cares. From Software system is then at number 2. Number 1 is relatively easy to guess, as I have stated this numerous times. No one does combat like Team Ninja, specifically in Nioh. Other games like Wolong and Stranger of Paradise are not on Nioh's combat level despite some good ideas. Nioh is on a level of its own. It's a faster combat similar to Soul style but with its own pedigree. Nioh combat is so damn smooth it seems unreal at times. Animations are incredible, attack variety is second to none. There's good amount of fantastically detailed weapon types. 3 bloody stances for each weapon, accompanied by a bunch of unlockable moves. Boss design is great. Grapple moves, varied defense, visual effects and sound effects are good. Finishing and backstab animations are fantastic. Combat rhythm and pace is very well done. I shit a lot on Team Ninja, and for a good reason. When it comes to combat design, they might be the best studio ever. They also almost always come up with incredible mechanics to accompany their systems, like Wolong's affinity system. Their character leveling systems are usually great as well. The problem is everything else. The way they demote their combat to Diablo-esque type over-the-top damage distribution brings the whole thing down a lot. Each subsequent playthrough of Nioh starts to look more and more like playing Diablo or Path of Exile instead of a sword and dance and counter style. But the first playthrough of Nioh 1 and 2 is some of the best you can experience when it comes to video game combat, especially against human enemies and dojo missions. Another reason why I shit a lot on Team Ninja is because they suck at creating anything worthwhile writing wise. If Team Ninja would have some sort of way to create combat for studios that need help with that, by them basically outsourcing combat to Team Ninja, and most studios out there could benefit from such an arrangement, While someone else would create the world, atmosphere, story, characters and such, it could lead to a masterpiece of a product. First time I started playing Nioh, it was the variety of moves for each weapon type that overwhelmed me. For example, vaulting over the enemy, or using different types of parry and counter, or creating angles while avoiding attacks, which leads to easier hit landing. Very technical stuff that plays out quite fast and precise with tight and smooth animations. With so many moves available, one might think that rhythm would be damaged that way, but it's not. It all fits and plays out very nicely. Highly skilled players that are able to manipulate so many moves would make combat encounters against humans look truly incredible. Unrealistically great. Like, how in the hell is such incredible combat depth and smoothness possible? The only problem was the enemy design in a way. Don't get me wrong, enemy design is incredible across the board, but fighting humans in duels was so much more fun than fighting yokai. Because against humans the player can use all of the moves, but against yokai only basic stuff works. Then we could transform into yokai ourselves briefly to add more dynamics and variety to combat. Nioh 2 introduced a counter burst attack that made everything even more epic. I think I've said enough. It's basically stupid good combat system that Team Ninja doesn't utilize in the best way due to their difficulty design based around repetition and loot. But for that first playthrough I can guarantee you that it's going to be an unforgettable, mind-blowing experience that only Team Ninja can create. Anyway, check out the description for pages, subscribe to our merch, and thanks for watching.